Since the upcoming movie of Deadpool and Wolverine is coming out and he's around the corner very shortly, I think it's the best thing to do to go through the Deadpool movies. And since we've covered the first Deadpool movie already, if you haven't seen that, check that down in the description. We thought that we would do Deadpool 2 review. Let's check that out now and see if it's any good or the original. Let's get into it. So, for me, Deadpool 2 is a bit of a weird one, and you might be like, what do you mean by a bit of a weird one? And I'm thinking it's a bit of a weird one because a lot of people would say this one's better than the first one. I'm on the other side of the coin. I think Deadpool 1's better, got a better story, even though it's a lower budget. I think that this film just is a tad bit overrated, because I think that by far it might be funnier than the first one. But for me, the actual story is a bit weaker, and everything about this movie just feels a little bit meh to me. And it's not a bad film. I think it's a good film, but where people overhype it, not annoys me, but I just don't get the hype, if that makes sense. But for me, I think Deadpool, this film in general, is a bit weird because we're not following like a revenge plot like we saw in the last film. We're really following Deadpool trying to protect this kid called Russell from this other guy named Cable, who has had his family basically killed in front of him by a guy called Russell, who at this point isn't really a bad guy. He's just a kid, a knobhead kid, let's be honest, and an absolute douchebag. But let's just take it back and think that he's still just a kid. He hasn't killed anybody, he hasn't done anything harmless, but this guy is coming back in time to kill him to stop his family being killed. So then it basically sorts itself out and the new timeline would be created with his family still alive. But it's an interesting concept because really we haven't got a villain in this movie, because technically wouldn't everybody think about doing the same thing if you could go back in time? I think the problem with Cable is by the end of the film he becomes quite a lovable guy. He takes away his chance of going back to see his family by saving Deadpool, which we'll get onto later on. On Russell though, I think him trying to be protected by this sort of like Suicide Squad that Deadpool has created is just a little bit like, I don't know, it doesn't feel like that's the main focus of the film, whilst that being the focus of the film. It just seems like the comedy element is fucking spot on, but the story just isn't that well rounded enough. Also, don't really get the X-Men stuff that they put in this film, because just like the first film, if you don't have Professor X, Wolverine, Mystique, Magneto, somebody popping up who's being popular in the X-Men films, there's no point in bringing in the X-Men people, because I don't want to see a Colossus and a teenage Negasonic Warhead. I don't really care about those characters, I'm gonna be honest. We want to see a Wolverine. We want to see, like we're gonna see later on in July with Deadpool and Wolverine. I think that's the sort of thing that we expected in one of the Deadpool films if you're gonna include the X-Men in some way, shape or form. However, since you are not using those characters, what is the fucking point? There's no point having it in either Deadpool 1 or Deadpool 2 if you're just going to use like side characters, because we thought that would have changed after Deadpool 1, with Colossus being, okay, it's a low budget film and using smaller characters. Obviously we saw Juggernaut up here, but he weren't part of the X-Men. It was a good little villain to have in the film, but again, he didn't really feel like he got used as a mainstay villain. It feels a very weird one in my particular opinion, and everything just feels slotted and forced in rather than having a steadily flowed film. And I think that's why we might have had to wait several years for a Deadpool 3. I might be wrong. Also, I think that the film had such a great start. Even though I've dissed a load of things about this film, the start of the film cannot be ignored. As we saw Vanessa's death being one of the most dramatic things and unexpected things to happen at the start of Deadpool 2. People might have saw it coming, I'm not sure, but I definitely didn't when watching this film. And that part of the film and the stuff between Deadpool dealing with grief after that point as well, and him trying to kill himself multiple times and he can't kill himself because he just keeps coming back alive because he's immortal and the rest of it. I think that was the part that really should have been highlighted in this film more, and that should have been the main thread throughout the film. even more. Because the stuff at the end of the film was even better than the stuff at the start. Even though Vanessa died and stuff, we had a really cool moment where Deadpool was able to meet Vanessa throughout several points in the movie and was able to come across in that sort of last elements of the film when she was like, okay, we can finally meet because you're so-called dead, but she turns around and said, they need you more, and the rest of it, and that's where he is brought back to life, obviously, which we'll get onto in just a second, but that sweet little moment is one of the best elements of the entire film. Either that or Deadpool getting ripped in half by Juggernaut. That was pretty good, I'm just going to say that. And him having to grow his legs back, that was... There's two moments that stand out in this film, and those are the two. On the ending, I think it was good how Russell had to be like, Deadpool was like, I need to talk to you, I need to stop him from killing his first person, and he wasn't able to convince him not to do that, but he was able to block the shot and take the bullet. And I think that was such a great thing, because he was going to kill his headmaster, somebody that had tortured him and everything like that, but if he'd killed the headmaster, he would have turned into like a fully blown fledged killer that would eventually go and kill Cable's family, and obviously that had to be stopped. So that's why Deadpool jumped in front of the bullet and took the bullet for himself, and he did that with that neck collar on, in which prevents him from using his powers, in which his power is immortality, so he felt that and was going to die from that. But then that's when Cable goes back in time to put the coin, the token that was from Vanessa and his first date, and Cable goes back in time and uses that to block the bullet, and that made such a cool moment. And for me, it was a little bit cringe at times in that last few minutes. It was meant to be funny, but it did come across a little bit like long-winded and a little bit cringe. I think it was designed to be that way. But I think then you got that cool little moment with Vanessa and Deadpool, because Deadpool basically thought that was it, and that Wade and Vanessa could be together then in their version of like a heaven. But then that's where she basically turns around and said, they need you more and the rest of it, and he needs you more and the rest of it. So that's where he gets booted back down to Earth. And yeah, I think that weren't a bad ending. So to summarise, for me, I think that Deadpool 2 is a great film and a 7.3 out of 10, even though for all its weaknesses, I do think the strengths outweigh the weaknesses. And if you haven't done so already, put your ratings down in the comments down below and let us know the reasons why you have rated it, what you have rated it. Is it good, bad, terrible, amazing? Let us know all that jazz down in the comments down below. Hit the like button, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell, and I shall see you fine folks in the next one. Later.